The most powerful city in the world was 48 hours from going feral, and the only person who could stop it was a janitor on his knees in the dark. He wasn't a scientist, he wasn't a vampire, he wasn't even supposed to be on that floor. Just a single dad in a gray uniform, hands wet with industrial solution, quietly fixing a multi-million-dollar system that 72 hours of elite engineers couldn't touch. 4 minutes and 11 seconds later, the red alarms went dark. The veil grid exhaled, became still. He stood, straightened his uniform, walked back to his mop cart. He didn't know the camera was recording. But she was watching. On the 48th floor, Serafina Voss had lived for over 200 years, daughter of the Vampire King, the most powerful bloodline in the Northern Territory. She had negotiated peace treaties, watched cities rise and collapse like tides. She had stopped expecting to be surprised by anything human. She watched the footage replay for the third time. Long white hair, sharp, still. An essence necklace at her collarbone that had not reacted to anything in decades. It was vibrating now. She turned to her assistant slowly. 4 words, barely above a breath. "Who is the cleaning guy?" No one had an answer. But by sunrise, she would find one. His name was Malik Thorne, 34, human. 2 years earlier, he had been a lead systems engineer. Respected, precise. Then his wife died, and while Malik was still learning how to breathe again, a man named Baron Mordecai Ravencroft falsified timestamps on 3 critical reports. Small, surgical, edits that turned Malik's finest work into evidence of negligence. The dismissal came quietly. No hearing, no defense. Just a sealed file and a walk to the parking lot he still replayed some nights. 18 months of closed doors followed. He took the night cleaning job on a Tuesday, told himself it was temporary. He told himself that every single night. That morning, his daughter Leora had pressed a drawing into his hand. 7 years old, her mother's eyes, a gap in her front teeth, a tall stick figure in gray, holding a tiny one. Underneath, in careful crayon, "Dad the Fixer." He folded it twice and tucked it into his breast pocket. It was still there when he knelt beside the veil grid panel at 2:17 in the morning, and felt the system recognize him like an old friend. Nocturne City never sees sunlight. It rises like a wound that refused to close. Towers of black glass. Streets carrying the low hum of a population always one bad moment away from something unforgivable. At the center, obsidian spire, 49 floors of polished black stone, home to the veil grid. Most residents have never heard that name. They simply feel it. A quietness in the air, a steadiness in the blood, pure essence energy through every wall and wire, like a slow, invisible heartbeat. Remove it, the city doesn't go dark. It goes feral. 3 days failing. The CTO hadn't slept. 12 engineers rotating in shifts. Every patch failed. 6 weeks until the largest Essence Festival of the year. The one-night demand would push to absolute maximum. The countdown was running. No one was going to stop it. Except a single dad with $43 in his checking account and a daughter who needed new shoes before Monday. He was not okay, but he was about to become something no one had ever imagined. If this story already has your heart, you're exactly who it was written for. Don't go anywhere. Drop this in the comments. If the system erased you the way it erased Malik, would you have gone back to fix it anyway? Yes or no. 2 words, that's all. He went home the same way he always did. Service elevator, loading dock. Past the security guard who never looked up. 6 blocks with his hands in his pockets and his eyes on the pavement, the way a man walks when the world offers very little if you look at it directly. He did not feel like someone who had just saved an entire city. The apartment was quiet, that particular 5 a.m. quiet that belongs only to parents. Leora was asleep on her side, drawing pad open on the floor. Malik stood in the doorway, looked at the red electricity bill on the kitchen table, set the folded drawing beside her cereal bowl, smoothed the crease with his thumb. "I'm okay, baby," he whispered. "Go back to sleep?" She didn't stir. He lay down on top of his covers, still in his uniform, closed his eyes, asleep in under a minute. 3 floors above the city's relay grid, Serafina Voss did not sleep at all. 1 folder, 1 personnel record. Malik Thorne, human, 34, janitor. Previous employment, lead systems engineer. Contract terminated 26 months ago. Reason on file, professional misconduct. She read that line 3 times. Then she walked to the window, hand resting at her collarbone, over a necklace vibrating at a frequency she had not felt since the 1700s. Talent didn't surprise her. What surprised her was the warmth. When Malik touched the veil grid, the essence hadn't simply responded, it had recognized him, like a tuning fork remembering a pitch it had always known. She picked up her phone. Pull his original project files from the Northern Clan archive, all of them. Find out who authorized the misconduct notation. She already suspected the answer. Thursday, 11:20 p.m. Malik pushed his cart down the 47th floor hallway, running his checklist, panels, floors, waste bins. The checklist was simple. It did not require him to think about anything he had lost. He was nearly at the server room when he heard it. Not an alarm, a sound, low, irregular, buried beneath the ventilation hum. The essence fans were vibrating wrong. Not dramatically, not enough to trigger an alert, just wrong. The way a car engine sounds wrong 3 weeks before it fails. To everyone except the person who knows how to listen. He stood in the hallway for 45 seconds. He thought about Leora. She had told him that morning, with the calm of a child who doesn't yet know what is impossible, that she had dreamed about thirsty shadows in the city streets. He thought about timing conflicts, about what a secondary collapse would look like. "This is not my problem. I am a janitor." He pushed the cart forward, then stopped. The sound settled into his chest the way his daughter's voice did. Impossible to walk away from. He looked down at his hands, faint warmth in his palms, just for a moment, like a question. He made it 4 steps before his badge scanner beeped, and the server room door unlocked itself in front of him. Malik went very still. "I didn't do that." And then, because he had never been able to leave a broken thing alone, he pushed the door open and went inside. The diagnostic terminal was exactly where he remembered it. His janitor badge still carried deep-level credentials from his engineering days, never revoked. He had discovered this 6 months ago and told no one, because being seen meant being questioned, and being questioned meant someone would find a man the system had already decided to throw away. He pulled up the diagnostic layer. His stomach dropped. The original error had been masking something underneath. A secondary conflict buried 3 layers deep, invisible unless you knew the architecture from the inside. Not a random failure. The code had been placed deliberately. A timing trap designed to compound under high load. Look like natural hardware failure. Detonate quietly, long after anyone could trace it. Someone had done this on purpose. Malik pressed his hands flat against his thighs. He thought of a name he had not spoken aloud in 2 years. The name on the authorization code at the bottom of the patch. The same name that had appeared on the reports that cost him everything. Baron Mordecai Ravencroft. He was still staring at the screen when the door opened behind him. Serafina Voss stood in the doorway. Plain dark coat, white hair loose, essence necklace catching the dim light like a small cold star. She looked at him, at the screen, at him again. "I've been looking for you," she said quietly. Malik stood slowly. "I have a badge. The door unlocked. I wasn't—" "I know." She stepped inside. "I unlocked it." He went still. "You didn't just fix a patch," she said. "You heard something no one else could hear. I need to understand why." He turned back to the screen. "There's a bigger problem. Worse than the first. 3 layers down. This isn't a malfunction." He pointed to the authorization string. "Someone put it there." She moved beside him, close enough he could feel the particular stillness that radiated from her, the way a very old thing holds itself when it has learned to be careful. "You know this code," she said. "Not a question." "Yes." "Then you know whose it is." "Yes." A pause. "What did he take from you?" Malik's jaw tightened. He thought about the sealed file, the 18 months, the drawing in his breast pocket, the only credential he still believed in. "Everything that didn't belong to him," he said. Something shifted in her expression. Barely there. A small involuntary softening she did not seem to notice herself. She reached past him and began to type. "Show me," she said. For the first time in 2 years, Malik Thorne sat beside someone who was asking him to. They worked for 40 minutes. Neither spoke much. But somewhere between his hands on the keyboard and her quiet questions and the soft vibration of her necklace, responding every time the system recognized his touch, something was happening that neither of them had a word for yet. At 1:14 a.m., Malik stopped the secondary collapse with exactly 6 weeks to spare. At 1:16 a.m., he pulled Leora's drawing from his pocket. The reflex so automatic he barely noticed, smoothed it once, set it face up on the desk. Serafina looked at it. Dad the fixer. She did not speak, but she looked at that drawing for a long time. Just when she thought she could trust again, the past returned, wearing the face of the one man who had put it there. You already know what kind of man Malik is. What you don't know yet is what he's about to find out. Keep listening. The summons came Saturday morning. A junior aide, an envelope, no eye contact. Inside, one cream card with the obsidian spire seal. Mr. Thorne, 48th floor, 9 a.m. S. Voss. Leora was eating cereal. She looked at the card, then at her father's face. "Is that from the vampire building?" "Yes." "Are you in trouble?" Malik thought about the server room. 40 minutes side by side with a woman who had lived 2 centuries and still looked at a crayon drawing like something she needed to memorize. "I don't know yet," he said honestly. Leora considered this. "Okay," she said, returned to her cereal. "Wear the blue shirt. You look less tired in the blue shirt." He wore the blue shirt. The 48th floor, warm amber panels, long table, Serafina at the head in formal clothes, white hair pinned back, necklace perfectly still, beside her, Lucian Blackthorne, the CTO pale, composed, 3 senior engineers, 2 legal staff near the far wall. No one looked at Malik like a man who had spent 2 nights saving their city. They looked at him like a liability they hadn't decided how to manage. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for coming." The formality landed like a closed door. Lucian did not wait. You accessed the VeilGrid terminal without authorization twice, using credentials flagged for revocation 26 months ago. He slid a tablet across the table. We'd like to understand why. Malik looked at the tablet, his own badge logs. He looked up at Serafina. She was looking at the table. Something cold moved through his chest. Not anger, something older. The feeling of standing in a room where people have already written the ending, waiting for you to say the words that make it official. He had been in this room before, different building, same silence. I heard the system failing, Malik said, voice level. Both times, I fixed it both times. The same logs will verify that. We can verify the grid stabilized, Lucian said. Unauthorized access is a security event regardless of outcome. Lucienne, Serafina's voice was quiet. The protocols exist for a reason. I know what they exist for. She looked at Malik, finally, directly. The formality in her face fractured, just slightly, the way ice fractures before it gives way. Mr. Thorne, tell this room what you found in the secondary diagnostic layer Friday night. Malik picked up a marker, and he began to draw. The entire VeilGrid architecture from memory. Primary module, secondary layer, conditional logic stack, load routing tree. His hand moved without hesitation, not performing, reconstructing something he had carried in his head for 2 years with nowhere to put it. The room was very quiet. He circled the secondary patch, drew the timing conflict, 1 millisecond, the width of nothing, the width of everything, traced the cascade path, how it would compound under festival load, how it would look like natural failure, how it had been placed precisely where no standard review would ever find it. He set the marker down. It wasn't accidental. He pointed to the authorization string. That patch was signed by Baron Mordecai Ravencroft, designed to create a crisis he could then solve publicly. Same method he used on my project reports 2 years ago. Same code signature. I spent 18 months trying to prove it. No one would look. The silence changed quality. Elara Nightshade, third from the left, leaned forward, looked at the diagram, the authorization string, then said in a voice stripped of everything except precision, "He's right, we didn't check the secondary layer." Lucian said nothing. Serafina looked at the whiteboard, then at Malik, not with formal distance, something unguarded, the look of someone recalculating. In over 200 years, no human being has resonated with the VeilGrid the way you do, she said quietly. What are you, Mr. Thorne? The question landed like a stone in still water. Malik thought about Leora's drawing in his pocket, his wife's voice. Your talent isn't for showing off. It's to save the people you love. The warmth in his hands, the word it whispered. Father, save. I'm just a single dad, he said, who doesn't want his daughter to live in darkness. The meeting ended without resolution. Lucian called for a formal review. Legal staff photographed the whiteboard. Malik was asked to wait in the corridor. He sat on a bench and looked at his hands. Down the hall, an old brass compass sat tarnished behind dusty glass. He looked at it for a long time without seeing it. She watched the footage 14 times. She unlocked the door. She looked at Leora's drawing and didn't say a word. Then the corridor door opened, and Baron Mordecai Ravencroft walked in. 2 years. He looked exactly the same, tall, gray-templed, immaculate. The kind of man who moves through a room as though it has been arranged for his arrival. Slim folder, 2 staff members, and a smile like a clean surface over something that had never been clean. He saw Malik on the bench, The smile did not change. "Thorn," he said pleasantly, "I heard you were back." Malik stood slowly. 8 feet of corridor, 2 years of ruined silence. His hands were very still, the warmth in his palms building, insistent, the way a current builds before a break. "Unauthorized access is unauthorized access," the Baron said, easy, unhurried. "Some doors were closed for a reason. Prying them open doesn't make you a hero. It just makes you a problem." Malik thought about the electricity bill, his daughter's shoes, the 5 a.m. walk home with his eyes on the pavement, the morning he sat in his car for 40 minutes before he trusted himself to drive. "I don't want you to mop floors forever, Dad." "I know what you put in the system," Malik said quietly, "and I know it matches what you put in my reports. When the festival load hits and the grid holds, every engineer in that room will know it too." The Baron's smile stayed exactly where it was. Something behind it shifted. "Good luck proving that," he said softly. He walked past Malik into the conference room, the door closed. Malik stood alone, warmth fading from his palms. Somewhere behind the wall, the essence fans ran steady and green, entirely unaware of what they had cost him. He reached into his pocket, held the drawing for a moment, folded it, put it back. He was still standing there when Serafina came out alone. She looked at his face and stopped. Something moved through her expression, a flicker she did not smooth over. She looked at the closed door, then she looked at Malik. And she understood the terrible truth. The man who had twice saved her city was standing in her corridor in a janitor's uniform, holding a crayon drawing like a piece of armor. And the system she had built her 200-year life around had done nothing to protect him, had been the instrument of his destruction. And she had almost let it happen again. Some wrongs are buried so deep that only one person can find them. And he's been standing right in front of the truth this whole time. "Stay with us." She did not go back into the conference room. She stood in the corridor with Malik for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for the decision to finish forming, then said quietly, "Come with me." He followed her. Not to the conference room, not to her office. She took him down a service corridor he had never used, past a door marked with an old clan seal, into a small room with no windows, one long workbench, a Veil Grid diagnostic terminal, the original prototype, installed when the spire was built. Before the politics, before the layers, before people like Baron Ravencroft learned how to bury things where no one would look. She locked the door. "The review will take 4 months," she said. "Lucian will run it properly. He's inflexible, but he's honest. The Baron knows that, which is why he came in person today. He came to watch your face, to see whether you'd break or disappear." She paused. "You didn't do either." Malik looked at his own reflection in the dark terminal screen. "I've had practice," he said. She pulled a chair to the bench and sat. Not formally, not staged, the way a person sits when they are very tired and have decided, for the moment, to stop pretending otherwise. "I need to show you something." She opened a file. Archive records from 26 months ago. Malik's original project reports, the ones Baron Ravencroft had altered. Beside each altered file, she had placed the recovered originals, pulled from a backup server the Baron had not known existed. 3 reports, 6 timestamps. The alterations were precise, surgical, and side by side with the originals, completely transparent. Malik sat down slowly. He looked at his own work, the work he had been proud of. Before a man with the right credentials and the wrong character, had rewritten it into evidence of negligence. He had known what was in those reports. He had known it for 2 years, but knowing and seeing are different things. And sitting here now, looking at proof that had existed all along, while he spent 18 months being turned away at closed doors. His hands were very still on the bench. "Where did you find these?" "The Baron decommissioned the backup server 14 months ago, or thought he did. My head of infrastructure had rerouted it to cold storage years earlier as a standard redundancy measure. His people didn't know to look there." She paused. "I didn't know to look there either, not until you showed me the authorization string." 2 years, Malik said. "Yes. I spent 2 years." "I know." The words settled between them the way heavy things settle, not filling the silence, just coming to rest inside it. Malik looked at the files for a long time. He thought about the parking lot, 40 minutes in his car, the specific quality of that silence, the kind that follows a man who has been told, with the full authority of institutional process, that what he knew to be true was not true. He had driven home that night, picked up Leora from a neighbor's apartment, made her dinner, helped her with her drawing, told her good night, and then sat at the kitchen table alone until 2 a.m. with nothing to show for any of it. "My wife used to say," he began. He stopped, started again. "She used to say that talent doesn't need an audience. It just needs a problem to solve. I think she meant it as comfort, but for a long time it felt like something else." "What did it feel like?" "Like permission to disappear. If the work matters regardless of who sees it, then it doesn't matter that no one saw it." He paused. Except your daughter sees it," Serafina said quietly. He nodded once. Serafina was quiet for a moment. Then, "I need to ask you something. Answer honestly, even if the honest answer is that you don't know." Malik waited. "When you touch the veil grid, what do you feel?" He looked at his hands. "Warmth, like the system is awake, like it recognizes something." He paused. "The first time I thought it was a feedback surge, but it happened again on Friday, and it said—" He stopped. Serafina waited. "It said father." He looked at her. "I know how that sounds." She reached up and touched her essence necklace. "It sounds like a bloodline signature," she said. "My team found something in the archive cross-reference, something that predates our current record system by over a century." She turned the screen toward him. "Your maternal line, 7 generations back. A family recorded in our oldest essence registry. I need you to hear all of it before you respond." He read the screen. The room was very quiet. "That's not possible," he said. "It's documented. I'm human." "You are human," she said. "Latent hybrid blood doesn't change that. It hasn't expressed in your line in 6 generations, but it expresses in essence resonance, which is why the grid responds to you, why you can hear faults no trained engineer can find, why the necklace vibrated when I watched that footage." She paused. "Essence signatures recognize their own family." Malik stared at the screen. 7 generations. An 18th century registry entry. A name connected to a bloodline he had never been told he carried. He thought about the warmth in his palms. He thought about Leora's calm certainty. "I dreamed about thirsty shadows in the city streets, Dad." Spoken the way a child states something she considers obvious. He thought about the way Serafina had looked at that crayon drawing in the server room. Not with curiosity, with recognition. "Leora," he said. Serafina nodded slowly. "Faint, much fainter than yours, but yes." Malek stood up from the bench. He walked to the far end of the room and stood with his back to her, hands at his sides. The warmth in his palms was no longer subtle. It was a pressure, the weight of everything he had spent 2 years deciding not to feel. I am a janitor. This is not my problem. Some doors were closed for a reason. He had told himself those things every night, because the alternative was standing exactly where he stood now, with proof of his own erasure on a screen behind him, and the revelation that everything he was had been present all along, waiting unnamed, vibrating at a frequency an ancient system could hear, even when every human institution had decided he was not worth listening to. He turned around. Serafina had not moved. Her hands were folded on the bench. The essence necklace glowed faintly, a light too steady to be a trick of the room. I need you to understand something, Malik said. I am not going to become something else. I don't want a bloodline or a transformation. I want my name back. I want my daughter to have a father who can look her in the eye and tell her the truth was worth holding onto. He paused. That's what I want. Serafina looked at him for a long time. In 230 years, she had made decisions with the precision of someone who had stopped being surprised by their cost. She had signed peace treaties and exile orders, watched people she trusted choose power over principle, over and over, until she had quietly stopped expecting anything different. She looked at this man, 34 years old, human, in a blue shirt, in a windowless room, asking for nothing except the truth. Something moved through her that she did not have a current word for. She reached into her coat pocket and set something on the bench between them. A badge, not a maintenance badge. A senior architect access credential, his name, Malik Thorne, printed in clean black letters above the clearance tier. Your name was never the question, she said. Not to the system, not to me. The review will take 4 months. The Baron will fight it. Lucian will run it honestly. And at the end, the record will show exactly what you have always known. She paused. But you don't have to wait in a corridor anymore. He looked at the badge. He looked at her. This isn't a gift, she said. The grid needs its architect. The city needs what you can hear. Something shifted in her face. The last layer of formal distance she had maintained for 2 centuries because it was the only armor that had never failed her. It did not fall. It simply opened. I should have looked sooner. I am sorry that I didn't. The warmth in Malik's palms was steady now, present. The way a current is present in a system that is finally, after a very long time, running clean. He picked up the badge. He held it the way he held Leora's drawing, the way he held things that mattered. 4 months, he said. 4 months, she confirmed, and then it's permanent. He nodded once, and for the first time in far longer than she would have admitted to anyone, Serafina Voss, the Vampire King's daughter, knew exactly what she had to do. He held on to the truth for 2 years with nothing but a child's crayon drawing in his pocket. Now it's finally holding him back. Don't go anywhere. This story isn't finished yet. The review took 4 months and 11 days. Malik counted them the way he had learned to count things that mattered. Not obsessively, not with dread, but with the quiet attention of a man who has discovered that patience is not the same as surrender. He went to work at Obsidian Spire each morning in the blue shirt, sat at a real desk on the 47th floor, in a real chair, with his name on a credential that opened doors that had been closed to him for 2 years. When Lucian's review team asked questions, he answered them with the same level voice he had used in every room where people had waited for him to break. He did not break. He brought Leora new shoes on the third week, red ones, with a small white star on each heel. She put them on immediately and walked back and forth across the kitchen floor 3 times to hear them squeak, then looked up at him with her mother's eyes. "Are things better now, Dad?" He crouched to her level. "Getting there," he said. She nodded, satisfied, went back to her drawing. The formal ruling came on a Wednesday morning, delivered in writing and then read aloud in the same conference room where Malik had stood without a seat months before. The review had found the following. Baron Mordecai Ravencroft had deliberately introduced a destabilizing patch into the Veil Grid's secondary optimization layer to engineer a crisis he could then solve publicly. He had used the same method on the project reports that ended Malik Thorne's career 26 months prior. Altered authorization timestamps, buried code signatures. The original backup files confirmed the reports were accurate and complete as submitted. The misconduct notation was expunged from Malik's record effective immediately. The senior architect appointment was made permanent. The Baron was stripped of title, his clan equity dissolved, his access to every essence-regulated system in the Northern Territory permanently revoked. He left Nocturne City on a Thursday, quietly, with 2 staff members and no announcement. He did not look back. Malik sat alone in the conference room after the others filed out. He looked at the whiteboard, faintly marked with the ghost of his diagram from that first Saturday morning, the architecture drawn from memory, the timing conflict he had circled, the authorization string in the corner. He thought about the parking lot, the 40 minutes in his car. It was always going to end here. You just had to stay long enough. He straightened his shirt and went to find Serafina. She was in her office on the 48th floor, standing at the window when he knocked. She turned. Something in her face settled, the way the essence fans settled when the load balanced correctly. "It's done," he said. "I know, I read the ruling." He crossed the room and stood beside her at the window, looking out over Nocturne City. The artificial moonlight was steady. The streets moved with the ordinary rhythms of a city that did not know how close it had come to losing them. Buses, foot traffic, humans and vampires moving alongside each other in the particular fragile peace that the Veil Grid made possible. Malik reached into his breast pocket and took out Leora's drawing, folded soft as cloth at the creases after months of carrying. Dad the Fixer. He set it on the windowsill between them, facing out, so the crayon stick figures looked at the city. "I used to carry this because it was the only proof I had," he said. Serafina looked at the tall gray figure and the small one beside it, hand in hand. "Proof of what?" she asked quietly. "That I was still the person she thought I was. When institutions decide you're not who you know you are, you need something to hold on to, something that doesn't require permission to be true." She never doubted it. 7 years old, and she just kept drawing the same picture every week, like she was reminding me. Serafina's hand moved slightly toward the drawing, then stopped. Malik noticed. "You can?" he said. She picked it up with both hands, carefully, the way you hold something old and irreplaceable. She looked at it for a long time. They stood at the window together until the city shifted into its late-night rhythm, the amber street panels dimming by a degree. "Can I ask you something?" Serafina said. "Yes." "Your wife, what was she like?" It was not a painful quiet that followed. It was the quiet of a room you have finally learned to enter without flinching. "Patient," Malik said, "enormously patient, not passive. She had opinions about everything and made sure you knew them. But when something mattered, she would wait for it. She understood that most things worth having take longer than they should. He paused. She would have liked this city. She would have wanted to understand how the grid worked. She would have asked you 100 questions and then apologized for asking too many. The corner of Seraphina's mouth moved. I would have answered them, she said. Malik smiled, small, unguarded, the kind that appears before a person remembers to moderate it. I know, he said. That's why I think she would have liked you. Seraphina set the drawing back on the windowsill. I have not had many people I could be honest with, she said. Not with sorrow, just with the careful plainness of a very old person, stating something they have long since accepted. 200 years is a long time to learn to hold things at a distance. You develop an efficiency, a system for deciding what to let in and what to manage from behind glass. She touched her necklace lightly. I watched that footage 14 times because I was trying to classify what I was seeing, fit it into a category. A pause. I couldn't. What did you do instead? I unlocked the door, she said simply. They were still standing there when the elevator opened and Leora came in, a small figure in a red starred coat, drawing pad under one arm, a look of serious professional interest as she examined the 48th floor. She found her father at the window, crossed the room at a run, pressed her face against his neck. Did you win? Yes. Are good. She pulled back, checked his face, found what she needed, then turned and looked directly at Seraphina, the Vampire King's daughter, with the unself-conscious directness that only 7-year-olds manage. Are you the vampire princess? I am, Seraphina said. My dad fixed your building. He did, twice. Leora glanced between them, ran a rapid calculation, climbed down from her father's arms and held out her drawing pad. I made this for you. It's the grid. Dad showed me the diagram once, and I remembered it. Seraphina took it with both hands. In careful crayon. Blue for the primary module, red for the secondary layer, green for the routing buffer. The Veil grid architecture, simplified, slightly imprecise, but structurally accurate in the way only a child who has grown up listening to a parent talk about their work can achieve, in the corner, in block letters, so it doesn't break again. The room was very quiet. Seraphina looked at the drawing for a long time. Then she did something her assistant, watching from the corridor, would describe later as the most surprising thing he had witnessed in 11 years working for her. She knelt down. She put her arms around Leora, carefully, the way someone holds something they are afraid of breaking. Leora hugged her back without hesitation. Your father healed more than the grid, Seraphina said quietly. He healed something in me, too. I have lived over 200 years. I have lost more things than I can name. You and your father are the first time I have felt family in a very long time. Leora patted her arm twice, gravely, the way children comfort adults who are carrying something heavier than they are admitting. That's okay, Leora said. We don't have very many people either. Malik looked at his daughter. He looked at Seraphina, still on one knee, holding the drawing pad with both hands. The warmth in his palms was steady and quiet and entirely at rest. He thought about his wife. Your talent is to save the people you love. He understood now that she had not been speaking only about systems. The house felt different now, not louder, not fuller, not transformed in the dramatic ways stories promise, just lighter. The electricity bill on the kitchen table was paid. The red shoes were by the door. and on the counter beside the cereal bowl, the old crayon drawing had been joined by a new one. 3 figures standing at a window, looking out at a city that was, for now, holding steady. Leora had signed it in the corner. She had written all 3 names. Some healings happen quietly, in windowless rooms and crayon drawings, and a 7-year-old who never stopped believing her father was exactly who he said he was. The story isn't over yet, and the best part is still ahead. 6 months later, Malik Thorne kept his old gray janitor uniform in the back of the closet. Not as a reminder, not as a trophy, just there. The way you keep a thing that was part of your life long enough that throwing it away would feel like a small dishonesty. It had been present at both fixes, both 2 a.m. mornings, the corridor confrontation, the nights a single dad quietly held a city together while nobody watched. It had done its job. He left it in the closet and went to work each morning in the blue shirt. His office on the 47th floor was not large. He hadn't asked for large. A window facing the city. A whiteboard he could use without asking permission. A terminal running directly to the Veil Grid's primary diagnostic layer. On the windowsill, Leora's original drawing, unfolded now, held flat under a piece of smooth glass she had selected herself from a shop 2 blocks away. "So it doesn't blow away," she had explained, very seriously. He agreed that was the right call. The engineers on his team had learned quickly that Malik ran quiet meetings, no rank to fill silence. He asked questions and waited for the full answer. When someone made an error, he sat with them at the terminal. No audience. When someone found something he had missed, he said so without qualification. Alara Nightshade transferred to his division within 2 weeks. No explanation. She appeared at his door with her tablet. "I work better when the architecture makes sense." He pulled a chair to the second terminal. "Then sit down." Tuesday evening in late spring, Malik was the last one on the floor. Not troubleshooting, not fixing anything. One hand resting lightly on the edge of the panel, not pressing, not typing, just listening. Feeling the warmth move through his palms like a familiar current. Steady, the way a river sounds when it is running exactly where it is supposed to run. "Father, save." The grid didn't whisper it urgently anymore, more like a greeting now. A system that had found its architect and settled. He thought about the first night, kneeling on this same floor in a gray uniform, hands wet with cleaning solution, certain the work only mattered if he got out of the building before anyone found him doing it. He sat with that memory for a moment, not to grieve it, just to mark it, the way you mark the last day of a hard season. Not with celebration, with the quiet acknowledgement that it is finished. You were right. You were just right about more than you knew. The elevator opened. Leora came in first, red shoes squeaking on the stone floor. Drawing pad already open, heading directly for the window. Serafina followed. Dark sweater, white hair loose, no formal coat tonight. She had begun doing this Tuesday evenings with Leora, who had decided, with the absolute authority of a child who has identified something important. That Tuesday was the best night because the amber street panels were at their warmest. Malik watched his daughter press her palm flat against the window and look out at Nocturne City with the proprietary satisfaction of someone who feels personally responsible for its continued existence. He looked at Serafina. She looked back. She drew 17 versions of the 47th floor today, Serafina said, in the dry tone she'd found 6 weeks ago, when she stopped performing composure around them. I have been informed they are each historically accurate. They are, Leora said, without turning from the window. Malik smiled. They stayed until the street panels dimmed. Leora fell asleep in the chair by the terminal, drawing pad across her chest, red shoes still on. Completely at peace in a building that had once been the most impenetrable address in Nocturne City. Serafina and Malik stood at the window. After a while, she said, "You told me you wanted your daughter to have a father who could look her in the eye and tell her the truth was worth holding on to." I remember. She looked at Leora sleeping, at the drawing pad rising and falling with her breath. She already knew, Serafina said softly. Before any of this, same picture every week for 2 years. She never needed proof. She just needed you to stay. The warmth in Malik's palms was very still. He thought about all the mornings sitting on the edge of her bed, whispering, "I'm okay, baby," into the 5 a.m. dark, not knowing if it was a comfort or a promise. It was a promise you kept without knowing you were keeping it. 7 years old, he said. She just kept showing up, with her drawings and her questions and her absolute refusal to let me disappear. He paused. I thought I was protecting her. I think she was protecting me. Serafina touched her necklace lightly. That is what family does, she said. The real kind, not bloodline, not title. It shows up, draws the same picture every week until you believe it. After 200 years of holding the world at a careful distance, she finally understood. The things worth keeping were never the ones you managed. They were the ones you let in, gray uniforms and crayon drawings, and the specific bravery of a child who pats your arm twice and says, "That's okay, we don't have very many people either." No system could engineer that, no patch could replicate it, no title could grant it. Just people, staying, showing up, refusing to let each other disappear. The old gray uniform stayed in the back of the closet, the red shoes were by the door, and somewhere deep in Obsidian Spire, the veil grid ran full and green, held steady by a man who never stopped listening, a little girl who never stopped drawing, and a woman who had finally, after 200 years, unlocked the door. This story reminds us that the most important things we carry are rarely the ones the world notices. The folded drawings in our pockets, the coffee mug we still set out each morning out of habit and love, the grandchild we call on a Sunday afternoon, not because we have anything to say, but because hearing their voice is its own kind of quiet strength. If you have felt invisible this year, overlooked, quietly erased by something too large to argue with, know this: the people who truly see you have never needed a title to do it. Sometimes the truest proof you have is a child who kept drawing the same picture, week after week, long before anyone else was paying attention. You only need one person who knows how to listen. And sometimes, that person has been in the room all along. This vampire tale was born from a real human soul, full of emotion, contradiction, and longing. AI was merely a companion who helped arrange the words to be as beautiful and clear as possible. That's why you'll find it not only terrifying, but also very human